The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back. You are loving baseball when we were 12 and innocent. Wow, long time ago, and things have changed in baseball quite a bit. My guest is Richard Johnson of Massachusetts. And Richard is a curator of a sports museum. Tell us about that a little bit, and then we'll get into memories of when you were 12.
Of course. Well, the Sports Museum I've worked for now, I'm starting year 42. So I've been there since 1982. And the Sports Museum is one of the few multi-sport museums in the country. So we basically, from an exhibit standpoint, cover the 6-state area of New England. But we also have a library and an archive, which I like to think is an archive of everything that regards sports for the region. So the scope of our library and archival collection is a little more broad-based, but our exhibits almost exclusively focus on the sports activity, amateur, professional, for the region of New England. So, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. And it's a great, basically, I think we're one of the great sports regions in the world. Of course, sometimes I'll even argue that it's the best because, any number of our teams here were the first in their leagues. Our collegiate history, basically the start of intercollegiate sports in this country, started in New England. And, and of course, of recent note, we've had a very successful time professionally over the past 24, 25 years. So there's really a lot to cover here, and it's my pleasure and privilege to be able to do that.
Beautiful. What a lifetime's work. 42 years doing the same thing. Wow. Let me ask you, who was your favorite team when you were 12 years old?
Well, I got to admit it was the San Francisco Giants. I am a Giant fan by extension. My brother became a Giant fan in New York City when my dad was a doctor down there, and they ended up moving to Massachusetts afterwards. But, he saw his first game at the Polo Grounds, saw Willie Mays hit a home run. When he went away to school, I inherited his Giant scrapbooks. He had these wonderful scrapbooks that he kept on the team. And, the Red Sox at that point were okay. They're actually pretty good, and they won the Impossible Dream pennant. But Willie Mays is my North Star. He is my favorite player by a mile. There's, so that's really where the Giant connection is my brother and I, and we share that. I mean, who did I call last night after the Giants won in a walk-off, literally a walk-off for their 9th straight win? I called my brother immediately, and we started laughing. It's like, yeah, so in many ways, I'm still 12 years old.
Wow, good. Keep being 12 years old for a lifetime. It really serves you best. Serves us best to be that. Keeping memories alive as a kid. What was your first baseball game?
Oh, I can tell you, it was the Red Sox versus the White Sox in 1968. So I was sort of advanced age at that point. Of course, I was 12, but most of my friends had been to games earlier. But it was at Fenway Park. With the Red Sox, White Sox, it wasn't the opening day. It was 2 or 3 days later because it was impossible to get an opening day ticket that year because they were hoisting the American League Championship flag on opening day. But I never forget, we sat in the bleachers behind the White Sox bullpen, and I remember asking my father, how many years older than Hoyt Wilhelm was he? And at that point, it wasn't many years older than Hoyt Wilhelm. So I'm looking at the guy pitching relief for the White Sox, or at least warming up in the bullpen, throwing a knuckleball, of course, who was almost basically the same age as my father, which I thought was pretty funny. but it was a thrill. I mean, I had never been to a major league game prior to that. Certainly had spent years watching on television and listening on the radio, and I still almost prefer the radio to watching TV actually for baseball. I'll never forget, I kept the scorecard. I can't find the ticket stub. It's got to be somewhere, but I've kept the program from that game as I keep the programs from every game I go to. And it was pretty special.
Wow. Of course, as an old New York Giant fan, you weren't a Giant fan when they were in New York, but you inherited the curse. I too am a former New York Giant fan, now a Met fan. But Hoyt Wilhelm was in 1952 a pitcher with the Giants. In his first major league game, he hit a home run. And Hoyt Wilhelm pitched a lot of games, never hit another home run. And,
there's something about that that's perfect, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. He got the monkey off his back early on.
I'm guessing it had to be at the Polo Grounds, so it must have been one of those 252-foot, ones right down the line.
Right. They called those homers Chinese home runs or whatever. Today, it's you'd have to explain that it's not any curse against the Chinese. But back then, we weren't so politically correct as we are now.
And put it mildly.
Yeah, things that I see in written form. I'm a baseball scholar, and I look back, and the way it's written is absolutely no respect for anyone different than the writer. Whoever it is, it's if you're Jewish or Italian or whatever, things have really changed. What do you feel has changed for the good and for the bad since you were 12 and a baseball fan?
You mean just in the game of baseball?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, not in the world at large. Well, I'd say.
Oh, we could go into that. We do 40.
Go into that too,
podcasts.
but I would say in baseball, what has occurred is because so many games are on television, and of course that's part of that's the lifeline to the game.
Right.
Games used to be, without rule changes or anything, games were played faster. So I can remember going to a game at Candlestick Park in 1978, Vida Blue versus Steve Carlton.
Wow.
And it was what they called a businessman special. It was a lunchtime game, probably on a Thursday, travel day for the Phillies. And the game was played in an hour and 39 minutes. I forget even who won the game, but it was, they were jogging on and off the field. They had to get to the airport and everything. And I recall that, I don't know, one of them pitched a complete game, I think. But, the pace of the game years ago, it seemed to move along quicker because there weren't the artificial, sort of dragging it out for the television ads and everything. And I understand why they have to do that. So that's one thing I sort of miss. I also miss the degree to which the inside game is not played today. I mean, so much of baseball in the past maybe 10 years have just been strikeouts and home runs. And gosh, how many times have you seen a suicide squeeze executed? I mean, maybe once in 12 years, I think.
Richard, do you remember the expression, get them on, get them over, and get them in?
Yeah, exactly.
And what that entailed was baseball players executing, hit and run, like you say, the bunches, and having a mind to do that.
Well, so much of the game, when it's played the way that I think it should be played, is it's played as much in the mind as it is played with your biceps or your legs, okay, that you can actually outthink teams. Boshi was actually pretty good at it. He's a cagey guy. And, of course, catchers make great managers because when they're catching, they're virtually an extension of the managerial staff when they're on the field. So, and Bosch was really, really good. I think Cap was okay, too. Gosh, he has a Cecil B. DeMille cast of thousands in terms of assistant coaches, so he should be pretty good with all that advice he's getting. But, you know, I miss the inside game, so that's another thing. So basically the length of games, the inside game being played as I really enjoy it more, and that's probably why I prefer the National League to the American League, because for years and years the National League was viewed sort of more as the inside baseball league, because for so many of those years pitchers hit. So, you know, when you have a pitcher
absolutely.
up there, if a pitcher couldn't bunt, then there's something the matter with the coaching, with the way the team was being operated, because pitchers should bunt. We don't have to worry about that now. And I sort of mourn that. I mean, you know, I can remember the hit that sort of, to me, was the farewell to pitchers hitting was Logan Webb, if I'm not mistaken. Didn't he hit a home run in September of 2021? You know, I mean, there's something just beautiful about that, and we're never going to see that again.
We're not, and it was an extension of the balance of the game. A pitcher would go through the batting order, and it was natural that you get a break as a pitcher, and it was also it also had a lot of lore to it. Pitching, hitting, pitchers that were good hitters. When I was a kid, Bob Turley was a good hitter. Don Newcomb
was probably the best.
Absolutely. And like any good Giant fan remembers, that the rivalry between the Giants and Dodgers, as great as it is now, that they're both teams are playing in California. You couldn't believe, growing up as I did in New York, you couldn't believe the rivalry between the Giants and Dodgers then. And throw in the Yankees to a metropolitan area where you had three great teams. The 50s growing up for baseball were tremendous. Let's put it that way.
I think there was such a mourning for the departure of those two teams after the 57 season. I actually looked this up. One would think, as a practical consideration, that the home attendance for Yankee games would have gone up in 58 because, you know, after all, two other teams have left, and even if you weren't a Yankee fan, you'd want to see Major League Baseball, maybe even go to the stadium and root for their opponents, right? Yankee attendance dropped slightly. It didn't go up.
It didn't go up at all. And you know what the Giants are going to recognize, what with the imminent departure of the A's, that and they were the first to make sure the A's didn't get a home in San Jose or in Fremont. They're going to miss having two teams and a rivalry, even if one team isn't playing well at the time. It helps the region to have two teams, and they're going to miss it.
I've already started to mourn the departure of the A's. I have many friends that are A's fans. In fact, some that go back to Philadelphia. of course, they'll end up being the first Major League Baseball team to have played in 4 cities, which I just find it very sad, because Oakland will have lost 3 Major League franchises in different sports within about an 8 or 9 year span, and it's just, it's devastating, because the East Bay has a wonderful spirit. But you can't blame taxpayers or politicians for not wanting to spend money to bail out the heir to the Gap fortune. I mean, for Christ's sake, but I do fault the Giants for not having allowed the A's the San Jose option. I really don't think it would have hurt the Giants at all. I mean, God, San Jose is a lot farther to go than Oakland, for God's sake. And, so are they the villains? Well, they're not the villains immediately, because the San Jose thing was years ago, but they're going to miss having their neighbors there. I mean, there was a wonderful rivalry there. It wasn't a bitter rivalry. It wasn't, like the Dodgers and Giants or something, but it was, I think it was very healthy for the game. And, of course, the overall history of professional baseball in the Bay Area, which included the Seals and the Missions and the Oakland Oaks and everything, it's going to pull a chunk out of that. And I think that's to be mourned.
Absolutely. And I'll miss the what they call day-night doubleheaders. One would be in Oakland, and one would be in San Francisco. And as a fan, we could catch 2 games the same day, and in 2 separate cities. It was tremendous. And I can't forget the 89 season, the year of the earthquake, and the year that both teams, Oakland and San Francisco, both were obviously successful. They both drew over 2 million fans. I think one of them had 3 million, as a matter of fact.
How about that, huh?
Well, yeah. It's, I am mourning this. One of my podcasting mates, I've had Nancy Finley, daughter of Carl Finley. And
I read her book, which I loved.
Great book. Tremendous book. And she's in mourning these days. She doesn't live in California anymore, but she's got a Facebook page, and she talks about what led up to the demise of the Oakland team. And somebody told me the other day, it's not done yet. The shovels have not been put in the ground. It's close. They approved funding in Las Vegas, and it really doesn't look good. But will the curse of Las Vegas extend to the A's? I mean, the Raiders are there, and it's just a changing world, let alone a changing sports scene.
Well, you know what I think it is? I attribute it. It's like the alternative ending to It's a Wonderful Life, where you go to Pottersville instead of going to Bedford Falls. And when teams move to Vegas and everything, I'm sorry, there are enough things going on in Vegas. We don't need them to steal our teams. It's sort of it's the Pottersville ending for the Athletics. And as you said, they haven't turned a spade of dirt yet, so there's still a chance. And you never know. It's still baseball, so a miracle, I suppose, could occur. It
allows me to think that if eminent domain were in force, the owners could be and the owners want to move, you got to sell. You got to sell locally and give local ownership a chance. This is a downer, me thinking about it, but I hearken back to 1957, when not only the Brooklyn Dodgers but the New York Giants moved. And
the Giants should have stayed. The Giants should have stayed because they would have had the National League all to themselves in New York. Can you imagine if the Polo Grounds survived? It would be the funkiest. It would be absolutely. It would be a national shrine. People would go, look at this crazy, beautiful place in Harlem, in Manhattan. I mean, oh my Lord, there hasn't been a ballpark in Manhattan since.
No, there hasn't. And it's interesting that if the Dodgers got some cooperation from Robert Moses and Mayor Wagner, they may have been in Queens, which is now the home of the Mets, and but O'Malley refused. It's not the Queens Dodgers. It's the Brooklyn Dodgers. It was horrible, and as you say, it broke the spirit of New York in an incredible way.
It did.
So it took a long time to recover, and people think the Mets are great, and they are. Having the Mets is great. Nothing will ever replace that rivalry, and
no,
just the way it goes. You spoke about Willie Mays.
Yes.
Wax poetic about Willie for me.
Well, just the beauty. I mean, there are certain athletes, and in the small group of them, you'd have Michael Jordan, of course. You'd have Bobby Orr, our hero here in Boston, and Mays, who you basically could play footage of them playing their sport. You could probably even play. Well, you play it silently, or you could play it with classical music as the backdrop, or jazz, and you could show it to someone from Romania who had no idea how these sports are played or anything, and it would take about 20 seconds for them to see the artistry in these people, that they would be seeing artists at work, not just athletes, not just guys out, sweating, trying to put a ball in a hole or hit a ball with a bat. Artistry, transcendence. These athletes were transcendent the way Louis Armstrong, Mozart, Jackson Pollock, you're talking about people on a different level. Willie Mays was on a different level.
No question. I saw the Giants, the New York Giants, in the Polo Grounds when I was 5 years old, 1951. Yep. I remember seeing them. My grandfather took me to the Polo Grounds. He took me to all three stadiums. He took me to see Joe DiMaggio play his last season, and he pointed him out. I was just like a tot. I'll never forget. He goes, "That's Joe DiMaggio, center field. You watch him. You remember. You saw this game. Blah blah blah." And it was the year that they brought Willie Mays up, and I saw the Giants play with Bobby Thompson in center field. Yeah. And when they brought Willie up later in the season, my grandfather explained the position changes. Thompson went to third. It was just, but Mays lit up the ballpark. That's what I want to tell you.
There was a joyfulness to what he did too. There was a joie de vivre. There was a certain. I wouldn't call it swagger. It wasn't swagger, but joy. Joy is the word that I associate with Willie Mays.
Yeah, and that's what I miss most about them moving was not the team so much, but Willie Mays was in his first prime. Now,
Yep.
I was lucky. I got stationed in California and Northern California and got to see Willie in his second prime. The only difference was the joy of the game was gone for Willie at that time.
Because it wasn't his town. It wasn't his city.
No. And
it was Willie McCovey's city, but not Willie Mays's.
Right. And Orlando Cepeda. Fans out here were looking for their own identity, Giant fans. And it took 2 or 3 years for Willie to be appreciated for his greatness. And boy, he was great.
He was great. Of course, he was playing in when they finally moved to Candlestick, he's playing in a wind tunnel where it did not complement his power hitting, but he nonetheless, he continued to hit, of course, because he's Willie Mays. But it was a challenge, I think, for them all, because as someone pointed out, I think it was Charles Einstein in his classic book, A Flag for San Francisco, which is one of my favorite baseball books. He basically said, whoever designed the park didn't go out to the site after 4 p.m. when the winds would start blowing, and then the temperature at night would drop about 25 degrees. So you'd go to a game there in June, and you'd be wearing a parka.
When they designed the ballpark, they tore down a mountain to make room for the ballpark. But the mountain you're right, exactly. The mountain was responsible for the lack of wind. And you mentioned the cold. When Candlestick was built, they put a heating system in. There was a heater under every seat. It never
and I'm sure it broke.
It not only did it break, it was never used. Never used. So that killed Candlestick for the fans, but it made it a legendary place to watch a game. They had what was called the Croix de Candlestick.
I've got one.
Do you really? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
if you went to an extra inning game and you stayed for the completion of it for about a year or two, they were handing out those buttons, and I've got one.
Oh, wow. Good memory.
It's got an SF and it's got icicles on it. It was classic. I mean, the thing about the Giants, too, I think the Dodgers take themselves very seriously, which they should. They're the team of Jackie Robinson. I have never been a Dodger hater or no, they're the team of Jackie Robinson. That's sacred to me, okay? But the Giants have always had a sense of humor, which is part of what's sort of charming about them, is that, the Croix de Candlestick. Remember the Crazy Crab? They had that mascot that everybody was throwing stuff at. And then, of course, now we have Lucille, which has got to be the best mascot in the major leagues. I love Lou.
Yeah. So many memories of Northern California sports. You mentioned, and we'll divert from baseball a little bit, the hockey team. Hockey team, the Golden Seals, were at one time owned by Charlie Finley.
Yeah, over at the Cow Palace, right?
Well, yes. And
the Cow Palace is still there, isn't it?
It is, and the Cow Palace had everything. It had the rodeo was at the Cow Palace at one time or another.
And tennis, because it's in the movie Pat and Mike, Katharine Hepburn is shown playing tennis at the Cow Palace.
Who was
Katharine Hepburn in the movie Pat and Mike, where she plays an athlete? You know, she's a golfer and a tennis player and everything. The tennis scenes in that movie were shot at the Cow Palace.
And I'm sure you appreciated it like me. We talked off the air. We share a birthday, November 8th, and we share it not only with Ed Kranepool, but we share it with Katharine Hepburn. So it's amazing how sports and life just has a certain commonality for people.
It's true.
Katharine Hepburn was a terrific actress, and Ed Kranepool was not so much of a terrific. He was terrific in that he's a symbol of the Mets, and he lasted as long as he did. But
and he was from New York too, which was perfect.
Yes, James Monroe High School in the Bronx.
I mean,
same high school as Greenberg. Hank Greenberg went to that. Who
the Yankees couldn't sign because they had a guy named Gehrig playing for them. But could you imagine if Greenberg had signed with the Yankees and they put him in right field? Oh.
All right. That might not have worked out so well. I like McCovey and Cepeda. Those guys. He wasn't an outfielder. He's a first baseman.
Yeah. And you weren't going to beat Gehrig, so the other guy they have on first base is another native New Yorker. I mean, how many great players have come from the city of New York? I mean, a ton of great. I mean, you could do if you did an all New York City all-star team, Whitey Ford, Manny Ramirez, you Gehrig, Rod Carew, you'd have a hell of a team.
Yes. It was a city where developing to be a baseball player was difficult. Boston, too, where you're from, in Massachusetts, the weather isn't inducive to playing a lot of baseball.
No.
We had basketball, we had hockey, but I'm thinking the Aspromontes were Joe Torre.
The Torres, yep.
Yes, Joe and Frank Torre. You say the Torres, so you're Frank Torre was a first baseman with the Milwaukee Braves, and because of him, they ended up signing his very, very pudgy, overweight brother. And who would have thought that his brother turned out to be not only a terrific baseball player, but a manager of some repute. And you wouldn't have thought of that after his Torre's first managerial experiences, one of which was as the Mets manager, and he didn't really do well as a manager until the Yankees. And
no, it's sort of an Indian summer for him, because he was probably named manager when he was in his mid to late 50s. And I can distinctly remember when he was a...
The proceeding has been a comfortably zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.